Today's show is brought to you by Leaf Filter Gutter Protection. Get a free estimate and $300 off to end the continuous chore of gutter cleaning at leaffilternow.com/blow. And Hotels.com. Shop with Hotels.com now to take advantage of their great hotel deals, as well as save $30 off select hotel stays of $250 or more when you go to use Hotels.com/blow. Enter code LISTEN30. Some terms apply. Start the clock. Unlock the gates. Blowjam is back with another flawless installment of Podsmash, the podcast that reviews podcasts. I'm your host, Delia Blowjam, and I am joined by my husband and co-conspirator, Ryan Blowjam. What up, Rye?
What's up? How's it going, guys?
So we regularly listen to podcasts all day, all the time, and we go to live shows. We do a lot. So you can trust us. Trust our opinions. We're here to help. Our first segment, we always start with our top 3 picks of the week. This week, we have 2 picks because we're lucky to have a podcast expert stop by and give us his top 3 episodes. So, Ryan, go ahead, kick it off, feed me. What's good?
All right, my top pick for this week is a cigarette sandwich. The episode is called Tiny Little Jumanji. Well, they're a podcast where they just do, like, sketch, and they pitch each other sketch ideas. And it's pretty funny. They did like a sketch about Jumanji. It's like after they get back from Jumanji, they've been stuck in the Jumanji board game for like 30 years. They come back and they're actually still like 12 years old, and they get bored. Like they're waiting for bagel bites to like cook. They got bored and they're like, oh, let's play a game. So they like looking at all these board games. They're like, oh, I don't know how to play this. I don't know how to play that. We're missing pieces for this. And they're like, Well, we know the rules for Jumanji. We played it for like 30 years, so like we won't get stuck at the board again. How could that happen again? You know, just don't roll that one thing, and then automatically they get sucked back into the board, back in the jungle for like 40 more years, and it just keeps happening. It's really funny until finally the bagel bites are done. I just thought it was like a really good concept.
The bagel bites take 80 years.
Yeah.
They must have been really frozen.
Yeah.
Or the world's biggest bagel bites.
Well, when they come back, it's only like a minute.
Oh, yeah.
That they've been gone, but they've been gone for 30 years in like Jumanji time or whatever.
I get it. That sounds so funny. And I'm sure the journey to get there and back is also really, really good.
Yeah, it's really detailed. It's good.
I still haven't listened to Cigarette Sandwich ever since you brought it up last episode. It sounds so funny.
Yeah, they're one of my Instagram follower podcasts, and now it's like my favorite podcast.
See, the way that social media works out in our favor. Cigarette Sandwich. I actually did not find anything that I knew about before. I'm trying to do a segment where I review podcasts that review other podcasts, and I stumbled across this podcast that's called Podcast Reviews Podcast. And it's the funniest thing in the world. So meta.
It's some next level shit.
It is next level all the way. I've never laughed this hard. My coworker was like, "Are you okay?" She thought I was crying, but I was laughing. So this guy, his thing is that he reviews the iTunes reviews that people give him for his podcast. That's the whole thing. So somebody gives him a review. He's like, he reads the review and then he's like 5 stars. But it took him like 11 episodes to even get a review. And just the process, because like he's checking in every week. He's like, oh, regularity is a big deal, which we understand. And it's just like a crazy process. He's so silly, and it's only a minute long, each of them. So, Ryan, like, let's listen to some.
Yeah, I thought it was really cool, and I'm actually going to write a review for them.
Oh, yeah. What's your review going to be again?
I don't know. It's in my phone, so I don't really know.
Oh, that's okay.
I'll read it to you once I actually do it.
Oh, yeah, good idea.
We'll send them a link, and hopefully we'll be on their podcast.
I basically want this guy to like be one of our best friends and talk to him and just tell him how much we love him. So yeah, let's go ahead, take a listen. We're into playing clips these days, so hopefully I'll do this well. And I remembered my phone.
Welcome to the podcast, formerly known as the iTunes Reviews podcast. I haven't quite settled on a new name yet, but the reason that I haven't been getting any reviews, it came to my attention that the iTunes store actually doesn't accept podcasts that have been submitted with the word iTunes in the name of the podcast. So that's my fault. I'm going to have to try to figure out a better name for this podcast, but then hopefully it'll go out to Apple and they'll accept it. So thanks for bearing with me. Hopefully we'll get this thing sorted out, and we'll see you next week.
Let's listen to another one.
Resuming episode.
There's a reviews section. You can give it a number of
Wait, take it back.
Welcome to the iTunes Reviews podcast, the podcast where I review the reviews of this podcast. Unfortunately, I have not yet gotten any reviews, so what we're going to do, you want to go to your iTunes, either on your phone or on the computer or something, and there's a reviews section. You can give it a number of stars, and you can write some words down, and whatever you write there, I'll review it on next week's episode of the podcast. So just make sure to do that on iTunes, because that's the only place I'm looking. And I'll review it. I'll review your review. So just do that, and we'll see you next week.
All right, we'll do one more.
Welcome to the Podcast Reviews podcast, the podcast where I review the reviews of this podcast. I decided to reach out to Facebook today. I heard word of mouth is the best form of marketing, and I thought I'd try to cast a wider net than just people finding this organically. So if this is your first time listening, if you're my Facebook friend, thanks for checking it out. The basic gist, you go on your phone or computer, you go to the iTunes, and you write a review, and then next week I will read the review, or I'll at least review the review, and it could be a good time. Unfortunately, hasn't really kicked off the ground yet, but I'm sure. Thanks for listening, and just if you just can write reviews on iTunes for me, then the podcast can get started. So thank you so much, and we'll see you next week.
I love this guy, so you're going to have to listen to see if he actually gets some reviews. He does, but how long is it going to take?
Yeah, he does get reviews.
I started off, well, come on. I was trying to give suspense. Actually,
okay.
I accidentally started off with like episode 6 or something. So you just take the journey with him. I wish I knew his name, but hit him up on Twitter. We got to do that. I can't stop telling you guys that I deleted my Twitter account. But please leave a review for him. It's called Podcast Reviews Podcast.
Oh, you reviewed on iTunes?
Yeah, reviewed on iTunes. That's the only place he's checking. So, loving that one. That one's amazing. What's your next one, Ryan?
Mine's actually History on Fire. It's an episode called, it's with Janelle Bellelli. It's a history podcast. It's pretty famous. The episode's called Sex, Sake, and Zen, The Life of Ikkyo Sojin, Part 1. It's a more lighthearted episode of like History on Fire. It's the story of like a Zen Buddhist that loved drinking and having sex. He was a real partier. He was the illegitimate son of the Emperor of Japan in the 15th century. He grew up in a Zen Buddhist monastery because his mother had to flee and she had to like hide him in the monastery, so he grew up like Zen Buddhist. But despite his tumultuous like upbringing and his bad childhood, he actually ended up being like a very optimistic, very Zen like guy, always in a good mood. He'd always like to party and have sex, and it's crazy. He had like a Zen Buddhist way of life. It's like kind of like the coolest Buddhist.
That's my kind of Buddhist. I could get down with that.
It's like really good because like History on Fire is usually like really brutal. This is like a real fun, lighthearted one.
Oh, that's good. Yeah, it's not on fire for not. That's for sure.
Yeah, it's pretty good.
Oh, nice. I gotta check that one out. I'm like really backed up. Okay. So,
You got one?
I sure do. I got the daily podcast from New York Times with host Michael Barbaro. And this particular one was on Friday, March 22nd. It's called How New Zealand Banned Assault Weapons in 6 Days. Imagine that in the United States. That's definitely impossible. So their Prime Minister, Jacinda Ardern, I think it's so crazy. Ryan, she's younger than you are. And she's the Prime Minister. And she's fucking badass. I guess when she was running, people were like, well, are you going to get pregnant in office? Isn't that going to hinder your abilities? And she was like, you would not ask this question to a man, so I'm not going to answer that.
Oh, wow.
She did have a baby in office. When the baby was like 10 days old, she was like talking about government business. So that's just a background about her. She's like great. And then just her response to the terrible tragedy at the mosque in Christchurch. She was just like, I'm with you, you're us. We will pass gun legislation, and it took like 6 days.
Well,
she pushed it through.
It's different over there in New Zealand. They don't have a Second Amendment.
That's true. It is different, but
the right to bear arms. So it's a lot easier for them to just do it in like 6 days. Yeah.
Well, it would
take years to do it here.
You know what? It's actually not that easy there. It really isn't. They do have, communities that are big into guns and everything. So it wasn't that, especially it shouldn't have taken 6 days. It's just like her tenacity and people coming together and the right timing for doing that. Listen to it. I don't think I'm doing it justice here, but it's extremely enlightening. She's amazing. My heart goes out to the people there. It's just awful. I wish that we could do it. And even though it's ingrained in our society, there's still no reason for us to have assault weapons. That's it.
That's what I think.
Yeah. Okay.
I mean, you got to register your car.
Yeah. That's a deadly weapon.
No.
The fuck?
Oh, well.
Oh, well. So, are you ready to get into our segment especial?
Yes.
But we want to say some words first. So, Jim Mack, the host or co-host of Pineal Express, he was kind enough to come over and enlighten us with his top 3 picks of the week. So we had a great time. Right after the recording, a discussion happened, or rather, I should say, a drunken rant from Ryan. Yeah. Ryan said some really insensitive things.
Yeah, old Buggy got too drunk. Apparently I have a drinking problem, even though I never miss my mouth, but maybe I should, because nothing good comes of it. I was arguing with Jim, who's actually like an academic scholar, and he actually knows his shit, and I'm trying to argue with this guy. That's how drunk I was. It was just stupid, and I had no idea what I was talking about, and I feel really bad. And
yeah, you were like yelling at him and everything.
I'm going to make some changes.
But the deal about Jim, and just to show his character, is like he could have just been like, shut them out. Like, I don't need that in my life. But instead,
cool about it, and he
patiently, he broke it down. He explained the facts. It was like, and like we were both resolving to be better people, and a lot of introspection. And that's a true friend right there, not giving up, like helping us see the ways.
It's a good wake-up call for me.
Yeah, really, it was a good wake-up call, and I just really appreciate it. So if you still haven't heard Pineal Express by now, do yourself a favor and subscribe now, because Jim's a brilliant man, he's a talented podcaster, and he's a true friend. So thank you, Jim. And all right, so now it's time for Jim's Picks of the Weeks. Jim's Picks of the Week.
This is Jim Mack of Pineal Express. I've decided to commandeer this section of Blowjam's podcast and assert myself in here, whether or not I have Delia and Ryan's permission. I guess they'll produce this after the fact, and we'll see.
Jim's got our hands zip-tied behind her backs. What's your top picks of the week, Jim?
My top picks, I've got... one of my top picks is there's an episode of The Majority Report. That's one of my top picks of this week. It's episode 2051 of The Majority Report. If you don't listen to The Majority Report, I do recommend it for your podcast listening. The Majority Report is a daily news podcast and news commentary podcast. And this particular episode of Majority Report, they did an interview with Jonathan Hari, who is an author who talks about mental health and drug addiction. He came out with a book called Lost Connections. And if you listen to a lot of podcasts, you may have heard of Jonathan Hari. He does the circuit. He's gone on Rogan and other podcasts before. But in this particular episode of the Majority Report, Jonathan Hari talks about the fact that depression in particular is individualized in our society to the point where people will talk about it as strictly a chemical imbalance, which it may be in some cases, but to reduce it to merely a chemical imbalance is to put it all on the individual. It's not to say that there are rational societal reasons why a person might be depressed. So is their job shitty? Are they in a bad political environment or a bad family environment? And when a mental health problem like, say, depression, which is what Jonathan Hari is talking about, is strictly medicated away, then it's kind of like a Band-Aid over a bullet wound. It just focuses on the symptoms of a problem and not the underlying causes in a societal framework of the problem. And so I do recommend that. It's really taking a different look at mental health. And the Majority Report's a good podcast anyway. So that is one of my picks for the week.
I'm sold, Jim. Now, can you, tighten up these cuffs, dude? How many picks do you have? You got 3?
I've got 3 picks.
Fuck yeah, that's within the format.
All right. My next pick is a podcast I recommend to everybody just in general. It's called Struggle Session, and it's not as dry as Majority Report. Majority Report's good though, but Struggle Session is particularly entertainment focused. So Struggle Session is 2 guys. One of them is a writer for a Jacobin magazine, and one of them is a writer for Jimmy Kimmel. And what they do is they'll go into some fandom. So they'll review maybe some anime, or they'll review some movie franchise, or some comic book series, or some video game series. They'll go into anything that has like a dedicated fandom and do a deep dive into it, kind of pick it apart, like what makes it good. They'll do like a cultural analysis of it. And then they will do they'll contextualize it politically, basically. So in this particular episode, Struggle Sessions episode this week, they did Interview with a Vampire. And so the host, Leslie Lee III, talked about the fact that Interview with a Vampire, he made the point that you couldn't make a movie like that today, so he contextualized it as a string of movies that came out in the 90s that were very dark and gritty and rated R, back when the film industry was a little bit more concerned about making artistic movies, whereas today the film industry is concerned about just pumping out franchise movies and comic book movies and make sure it's PG-13 so as many people can see it as possible. You can sell as many tickets as possible. So he talks about Interview with a Vampire. You have all kinds of violence. You have just very, very dark, gritty scenes. You have and compare that to other movies in the 90s like Silence of the Lambs, or movies that were kind of on the cusp of the 90s and the aughts like American Beauty, for instance. You don't really get that today anywhere near as often. And these are movies that were heralded, at the time, commercially successful back in the 90s, and oftentimes award-winning, like for instance, Silence of the Lambs or American Beauty. So they do a deep dive in Interview with a Vampire. They talk about the goth aspects of it. They talk about the movies as compared to the as compared to the Anne Rice. I better not confuse those two. The movies as the movies as compared to the Anne Rice novels that inspired them.
You got a bunch of vampires on your lawn.
Oh my god! Yeah, I'm gonna have a bunch of libertarian vampires on my lawn. We'll have to burn them all at the first light.
Their wrist and bleeding money.
There's not enough garlic in the world to combat this. So I definitely recommend that episode and any episode of Struggle Session, because if you go deep into their episodes, you're going to find something that you like. Some show, some movie, some book, some piece of pop culture that you're into that they do a very deep, smart analysis of, and then really talk about it as a cultural artifact in and of itself. And Struggle Session's a great show. So The Intercepted did an episode that was one of my top picks because they had a very smart and sensitive take on the tragedy at the mosque shooting
I heard that. Yeah.
In New Zealand, in Christchurch, New Zealand. And their take on it was that oftentimes notice if there's a white mass shooter, it's treated as like a lone gunman, right?
Yeah,
Whereas,
that's what they do. It's a lone gunman, but if it's like if you've got a little pigment to your skin, it's a terrorist act.
It's terrorism, right? Yeah. Right. I mean, a lot of people have seen like the Family Guy joke where there's an episode of the Family Guy where the person gets pulled over and the cops pull out a color wheel with different pigments on it to see whether or not it's like a lone actor or whether it's a terrorist. Like same idea. Like it's
what is the pigment of the skin? It's a terrorist act.
Right.
Or, it's domestic. It's fine.
And The Intercepted put out a really great podcast talking about the fact that this particular shooting in New Zealand was done by somebody who was informed by Chan culture. So like 4chan, 8chan, and somebody who was extremely online and who was influenced by online discourse surrounding Muslims in particular. So not so much just a crazy person, but a crazy person who was informed by a larger political and cultural discourse that we're having. And some of the people that feed into that discourse are people who will ostensibly condemn senseless acts of violence, through one side of their mouth, but on the other side of their mouth will spread Islamophobia generally. So people like Sam Harris or people like even Bill Maher will, obviously they're not suggesting that anyone go shoot up a mosque, but they will say things about Islam in general, or they'll say things like they'll both talk about racial profiling and profiling of Muslims is justified, or Islam is, an inherently dangerous ideology. And that feeds into a culture of online discourse that when somebody is crazy enough to go shoot up a mosque, to go shoot up a location, might pick a mosque on that basis. So it was a really smart, really well-informed podcast on that particular topic that showed a lot of good sensitivity. So I do recommend the Intercepted reporting on the Christchurch shootings in particular.
Jim's Picks of the Week. For you, the sweet and sassy listeners of Blowjam, Hotels.com is offering $30 off select hotel stays of $250 or more when you go to use Hotels.com/blow and enter code LISTEN30. With Hotels.com, you can get rewarded basically everywhere. From seaside cabins in Portland, to tree houses in Thailand, to 5-star resorts in Mexico, Hotels.com has all the options you're searching for in one place. And for every 10 nights you stay, you get one free that you can use at endless properties. Hotels.com's deals come with access to instant savings. Hotels.com. You do you and get rewarded. Free nights don't include taxes and fees. Instant savings available on select properties. Again, you can save $30 off select hotel stays of $250 or more when you go to use Hotels.com/blow and enter code LISTEN30. And for you, the sweet and sour listeners of Blowjam, Leaf Filter is offering a free estimate and $300 off their #1 rated gutter protection system. Leaf Filter Micro Mesh Gutter Guards were designed to make life easier for homos. And by homos, I mean homeowners. Once the product is installed onto your existing gutters, you'll never have to climb the ladder to clean your gutters again. #safety. So you get a lifetime transferable warranty, no holes, gaps, or openings. It installs on your existing gutters, doesn't void your roof warranty, and you get free gutter cleaning and realignment services. Keeps out leaves, pine needles, shingle grit, seed pods, insects, and pests, and voyeurs. It also protects your home against landscape erosion, basement flooding, heaving driveways, mold growth, foundation issues, It's true. It's a trickle down. So, to request a free estimate and get $300 off your purchase of Leaf Filter's revolutionary gutter guard system today, go to leaffilternow.com/blow. Again, that's leaffilternow.com/blow for a free estimate and $300 off. And we're back. It's time for news. What's new in the podcast universe, Buggy?
Apparently Spencer's back. He's back on Harmontown. He was just a little depressed. He's doing good now.
Yay, Spencer Crittenden, the Dungeon Master on Harmontown.
We also made a plugs theme for Comedy Bang Bang.
Oh yeah, podcast engagement. So we'll see if they pick that up.
Yeah. Something about listen to Over My Dead Body. Remember, I was talking about that last week when I was doing the list thing, and that was a really good podcast. And something about Sword and Scale, right?
Yeah. So there's a new host for Sword and Scale. It's she'd been on the show a lot. She runs a true crime website, and I believe she has her own podcast. Why didn't I write down her name? Anyway, she is doing all the free Sword and Scale episodes from now on. It's kind of weird. You can still hear Mike Boudet on the Sword and Scale Plus episodes, Patreon, all that. And it's just like, it's over the top. I don't even know what's going on in this world. Just, social media outrage and all that is just changing up a podcast that I love. But what can I say? It's just the way she goes. Ryan, that'll never happen to us, right? You're never going to post a meme with the word cunt in it, are you?
No, I just want to be a good person and not piss anybody off anymore.
Yeah, after last night.
I don't want to argue anymore. I don't want to... I just want to be good. I don't want to bum anybody out. I want everyone to be happy.
Okay. I love that. You make me happy.
All right.
As far as podcast engagement goes, Theo Von did not pick me in my voicemail for this past weekend. I thought it was great. I was outside and I'm like, yo, you hear that crunch? I put my phone to the ground and I'm like, that's snow, son. It's fucking cold. I got snow. And then I was singing the Informer song by Snow. Informer, say that to me, snow me, I go blame. Okay. I look you boom boom down. And then he saw someone stab someone down the lane. And then I realized in the moment that we haven't seen or heard from Snow because he's in witness protection.
Really? Why?
Because he saw someone stab someone down the lane and he's an informer.
Oh.
Yeah, they're coming for him. You believe me,
he
for
just
real.
wrote that one rap song that went in the witness protection program.
Obviously. He was so talented, he never came back. That's the only way to explain it, as far as, that's my suspicion.
That's funny. Well, I think Theo didn't pick you because he's a super popular podcast. So
that's true.
Probably had like 1 million people calling.
Yeah, and I have a high opinion of myself and expect things to work out. But I'm going to keep trying. I'm going to call the Savage Love Cast and talk about Blumpkins. We're going to do stuff for How Did This Get Made? So I'll keep you guys posted. And that's my news. What about segments? We had an awesome segment with Jim's PX of the Week.
What was your... Didn't you have a segment?
Did I have a segment? Podcast That Review Podcast. And then next week I'm going to talk about podcasts that also have the name Podsmash in it. This week, so I reviewed podcasts that do podcast reviews. Podcast podcast is amazing. That's the best one ever. But then there are podcasts that do what we do, just talk about other podcasts. There is one, and it's called Podcast Digest, which ain't bad. The guy, he interviews podcasters. So that's neat. It's kind of different from us that he talks to them directly and everything.
Oh, that's cool.
Yeah, so I respect that, the Podcast Digest. And who's the host of that? I don't know. It's like Dave or Dan or something. I don't know. He sounds nice, but they haven't put out any episodes in, I don't know, like 7 months, 8 months. So I hope it's still going down. It's all right. Then we have the podcast review show. So the podcast review show is it's just really, really pretentious. They have like kind of up-to-date episodes. They just I don't like them at all. They just think that their shit don't stink. They talk about stuff and like then they'll rate them like 5 stars. I don't know. Like Ryan, it made me think like when we review podcasts, should we give a rating system? I feel like that's really dumb.
No, just say if you like it or not.
Yeah, like it or not, whatever. Or I'll be like, okay, we're going to give this podcast 20 snap peas. We're going to give this podcast 1,000 airplanes.
2 bacons and 1 hot dog.
Yes. 5 scallop wrapped bacon. Wait,
1
bacon wrapped in scallops.
And 1 bourbon marinated salmon.
We're basically talking about what we're having for dinner tonight.
I'm so hungry.
Yeah, we're so hungry.
I need to eat. Yeah, hurry up.
Yeah, we do have to hurry. So what is it? Nay time? Is it nay time?
No, I had my Instagram followers podcast segment.
Oh, that's right.
Which is sadly coming to an end because I came to my last one, which is called Download Don't Listen Podcast. But I couldn't get it to work. I think maybe they gave up and burned their feed. I'm not sure if it was good or not, but, hang in there, guys. Hopefully you make it back. Maybe you just had some technical difficulties or something. But I noticed I went to your website, too, and that your domain expired. I don't know. Maybe they got arrested. Maybe they went to jail. Maybe it was like a crazy podcast where they ended up getting arrested.
What was it called again?
Download Don't Listen Podcast.
Maybe they don't want you to download and don't listen, and that's why they're MIA.
Oh, maybe you have to actually download it to listen to it. But why are they on Stitcher then?
And why is their website down?
Yeah, I don't know. How are you supposed to download it with the website down? I think their feeds is fucked.
We're going to have to investigate more.
Yeah. I'll get back to you on that one. Now we can do some nays.
Oh, okay. Oh, and I'm going to have another segment, or at least we're going to check in with podcast reviews podcast every week. And review it every week, just, to stay up to date.
I got to come up with a
new segment?
Because
You ran out?
I told the Instagram followers that had podcasts. Maybe I'll do Twitter.
Maybe you could help me out, and we could listen to the other podcasts with Podsmash in the name.
Oh, okay. We can.
Yeah, check that out. Yeah, there's a few. Surprisingly, I thought that I was like super original. I was like all mad one night. I'm like, well, you know what? If we're not doing Blow Jam all too often, then I'm gonna have my own show, and I'm gonna call it Podsmash. But there's like mad Podsmashes, so I'm not that original. But I love it because like this is so much fun. I look forward to it every week.
There's only one Blow Jam.
That is true. It's Blow Jam presents Podsmash.
Sure, there's a couple of Blow Jam bands, but
we're trademarked. We're the only ones.
We're the only legal one.
Yes.
So what was your nay?
My nay? Oh, you know what? It's kind of funny. My nay is also The Daily with Michael Barbaro from New York Times. It was actually even on the same day as the episode that was in my top 3, my Feed Me ones. So this was, the Mueller report came out. It was a special episode because the Mueller report was finished. And it's so dumb because it was just an episode of reporters sitting around and learning nothing. Like, okay, it just exchanged hands. We're still not going to know anything. Let's just deal with things that actually matter at the moment.
Yeah, how about you report on it when you know what's in the report?
Exactly. It just bothers me.
Yeah, it's all over MSNBC. It's clogging up the news feed. It's like, come on, man. Like,
it's like, oh, the report exchanged hands. That's it.
Yeah, whatever.
It just exchanged hands. We don't know anything yet. Come on.
Ooh.
Come on, people.
It's like breaking news. We don't know anything.
Yes. Well said, Buggy. All right, what's your nay?
My name is Broken Record. It's actually a good podcast, but it's with Malcolm Gladwell and Rick Rubin. It's just that I really like revisionist history, and he kind of dissed that whole thing. And that was like one of my favorite podcasts.
Malcolm Gladwell's
Yeah.
podcast.
No. He teamed up with Rick Rubin, you know, like he's kind of ditched that old format that I really liked, you know, the Malcolm Gladwell thing. But I mean,
It's still good.
it's still good, but I'd rather have the other podcast, so I'm gonna give it an A. Plus, Rick Rubin was only in like one episode. I don't know why. He like disappeared after like 2 episodes. So I don't know. They're gonna have a season 2. Maybe it'll be better. I don't know.
All right.
But I'm giving it an A.
Remember when we used to have an A segment? That was so dumb. Like, the A's were like, that sounds more like an A. But still, it's fine. We don't do A's. Something's got to fall in the
I'm
A.
just not gonna listen to it.
Yeah, just for your own personal reasons.
Yes.
But yeah, you could check it
It's
out.
a perfectly fine podcast, but I'm boycotting it.
Also well said. Special shout out time. You got a special shout out?
Yeah, I got one. Dumb People Town. They did a really good live episode at Largo. They had Karen Kilgariff, and she's from My Favorite Murder, and John Hamm. You know who he is. And it was really funny. Good times.
Maybe people don't know who he is.
John Hamm? He's the guy from Mad Men. Like, fucking
He's so funny.
Baby Driver. What else is he? He's in like
He's
everything.
in everything in the
Yeah.
world.
He was on Comedy Bang Bang sometimes.
He's really funny. You should do a lot more comedic roles.
Yeah.
Karen Kilgariff, by the way, with My Favorite Murder, that is also a podcast.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's a podcast.
Well, yeah, obviously. It's
Yeah.
like the #1 podcast. If you listen to podcast, you look at podcasts, that one comes up first.
I actually haven't listened to it.
I did. I don't like it, but I'm not into true crime stuff. You are. You would like it because it's like true crime comedy.
True crime comedy.
Because they talk about true crime stuff and then comedy riff on it.
Okay, yeah, I'll check it out.
So you would probably like it. But anyway, what's your shout out?
My special shout out is I forgot to figure one out. And I'm looking at my notes from last week, and I was about to be like, my special shout out is my dad. Oh, wait, no. My special shout out is my sister. She left an amazing voicemail. And Laura, I hope your poops are still coming out fairly well. Speaking of voicemails, do we have a voicemail this week?
I'm not sure. I guess we'll find out.
All right. Well, everybody, thank you so much for listening. We really appreciate it, and we'd love to hear from you. So follow us at _blowjam on Instagram. You can follow me at sincerely_robots on Instagram. You can hit us up on Twitter at Ryan Patrick Blackman 3,
Right?
but it's blowjam. So, and
Ryan Blackman 3.
Ryan Blackman 3.
Yes.
All right, very good. And last but not least, the Blowjam headquarters tip line.
Oh, God.
Please give us a call. We love hearing from you and your sexy voices. The number is 607-296-7297. Love to hear from you.
You have 2 old messages. Thursday, 1:44 a.m.
Cat. Cat's got your car? Call got your cat. Well,
Thursday, 7:24 a.m.
Precious and I don't like the way you've been progressing.
End of messages.